Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. But if you are new, my name is Carla and I make videos about how I show up for myself in hopes of inspiring you to do the same. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about negative self-talk and the impact that understanding negative self-talk and changing that had on my life and how it was the catalyst to change my whole life. Negative self-talk is where we all have that inner voice in our head. We have things that it tells us, but negative self-talk is where that voice becomes a critic. It is when it becomes something that is judgmental and shameful. And that's what my inner critic, my self-talk was incessantly criticizing every single thing that I did. It was telling me no matter what I achieved, no matter what I did in life, it didn't matter because, or it was fake, or I had no right to do anything, or I had nothing mattered. And a lot of the narrative around my negative self-talk was definitely focused on my weight. It wasn't until my journey that I understood that I had negative self-talk and my weight was a symptom of that negative self-talk. It was not the root of my negative self-talk and the root of all of my issues. It was the symptom, not the cause. I'm going to leave a video linked up here which brings you to my full mental health journey, my realization, how I've transformed my life. But in today's video, what I'd like to do is focus more down and hone into practical things that I did that helped me to change my relationship with my negative self-talk, and hopefully that these will be informative and help you guys. The thing about negative self-talk is it doesn't just affect weight. So I assume a lot of you are watching this because you're on a weight loss journey or you'd like to lose weight. I know that there are some people who watch for different reasons. With my channel, I really want to show that the things that pertained to my weight were actually pertinent to every part of my life. They kind of fed through every single thing that I did, from my career to my hobbies, to my relationships, my friendships, my family, everything that I did in my life. My weight wasn't the issue. It was there was a bigger issue, and that was my mental health and my inner critic. Coming back to the very start, I think what we can look at is when you are younger, you start to form a narrative about yourself in your life. It comes from cues that people tell you about yourself. It's cues that you pick up in society. It's things that you start to learn about the world. And when you learn about the world and you start to kind of create this narrative in your head, that narrative then gets solidified as you get older. Sometimes that narrative can be positive. It can be, that you're really good at sports. It's that you're a very kind person. And some of those things were for me as well. But also, I also had some negative self-talk that think about it when you're a child, you don't really understand the correlation between certain things. You're trying to make sense of things. You're trying to look for things that can connect ideas. So, it's somebody might say something about being overweight or somebody being fat or disgusting. And then you look at yourself and you realize that you are bigger than somebody else. And you kind of create this correlation then that therefore you are that because somebody said that. And then the world reinforces that as you get older, and it reinforces your own negative narrative. It can sometimes be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes it can just, it can keep going and keep building. And you almost don't question it. And that's what I think is so fascinating. We just live by what we are told, what we tell ourselves in our brains. I'd like to recommend somebody here, which is Mo Godot. He is the author of Solve for Happy and The Little Voice in Your Head. I highly recommend getting his books, checking them out. I'll leave the links down below in the description box. I always leave links down there, by the way, just if you guys want to check it out. And Mo speaks about how that voice in our head is not us. It is not us. And I still find it to this day, even after all the therapy that I've done, all the work that I've done, I find it very difficult to understand that that voice is not me. But it's not me. That voice is the narrator, the cues, the societal pressure, the norms, the people around me. It's a voice that has been created. and tells a narrative, and I had to dismantle that narrative in order to continue I had to dismantle that narrative in order to live my life and to change my life and to learn to show up for myself and to be my own biggest champion, because I was my own biggest critic. I was my own worst enemy. If you've ever seen any of my videos before, you might have heard me say when my doctor said to me, when you fix the head, the weight will just fall off. This is really coming back to that. When we're fixing the head, when we're working with the head, that is where the body will follow. It is where the career will follow. It's where the hobby will follow. Everything starts up here, and it's like this massive controller that we have in the world, and it's about reframing that. And there are ways to reframe that, to change that, because I've done it. And it's not a permanent state. That's something that I really want to reiterate here and really hone down, is that this is not a permanent state. My positive mental health can waver, and I can sometimes hear an inner critic rising up within me, but I have the tools now that I can help to push myself, put that voice back down again, or not listen to it. Just because it says something does not mean that we have to accept it. That is something that I really want to hone in with you guys. We do not need to accept the narrative that the inner critic tells us about ourselves, and we have the power to change that. I'm going to move on to a couple of tips then, and a couple of practical ways, and I hope you cannot hear that Hoover in the background, a couple of practical ways that we can start to change that narrative. And the first one that we're doing with anything is just becoming aware of it. If you just pick it, I think that before I had my realization that that voice wasn't mine, I just didn't even realize that there was this voice, that there was this negative narrator going on. I assumed everybody had this. I assumed it was just like this constant diatribe of how awful and horrendous I was. And when I realized that I could hear it then, I started to hear it so incessantly. I remember Vincent saying to me, you never allow yourself to enjoy your achievements. And it wasn't me not allowing myself, it was my inner critic not allowing myself. He was right. I never allowed myself because the inner critic was so loud that I never allowed myself to experience anything. I often speak about when I was a manager for a charity. I did a very big communications campaign. It had really high level people there from the Department of Health. We had the press there, we had the Lord Mayor. It was an amazing event. We had bus posters, and I had done the whole thing for a budget of €300. And I remember standing on the stage, presenting, speaking about it, and presenting to a room full of people. And everyone was telling me what an amazing success it was. And all I could think of is, none of this matters because you're fat. You are disgusting. You are a horrible person. You are like, what were you thinking getting up there? What a fraud. You should have let somebody else do that. I never allowed myself to experience that joy, to enjoy anything, to celebrate my achievements. And when I started to just hear the voice, just becoming aware of it. So my first tip is to just become aware of what you are thinking about yourself. You don't have to do anything about it. It's just awareness is always the first step. Becoming aware of something can help you to change the behavior. If we don't know that we have that, we can't change it. So just becoming aware. Next time you're going for a job interview, or the next time you're going out in public, if you feel kind of a certain way when you do that, hear what you're saying about yourself. If you're feeling a little bit anxious, if you've kind of got those butterflies in your stomach, think about what you're saying to yourself. Listen to what you're saying to yourself. It's really interesting when we start to hear that narrative. And when I started to hear it, I couldn't believe how omnipresent it was. It never gave up. It never stopped. It was constant all the time, from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. So that's why I want to ensure that if you guys hear this and you have really negative self-talk and life-limiting beliefs, I want you to know that if I, who had them constantly, can change, then you can too. Moving on from becoming aware of it, I think something that helped me was to examine whose voice it was and what voice it was and who is it. I would think back, say, for example, from not me. I know a friend who has really bad negative self-talk who was bullied really badly as a child and a teenager. When we look at whose voice it is, it's not her voice. It is those bullies that are bullying her. It is that narrative that they created, that they gave to her, and that is consistently running in her head. So even just because you don't have to become aware, but I think for me, it helped me to understand that, to go, okay, that's whose voice it is. For me, there was a lot of it was to do with societal. A lot of it was to do with diet culture at the time, realizing that I was overweight. I had some extra pounds on me as a child, having a circle of shame on the cover of a magazine, thinking that I was disgusting because of that, and then wanting to change, or not being able to change and using food as a coping mechanism. So there's a whole vicious cycle here for me, and that might ring true or be pertinent to you as well. You might be able to have a look and see whose voice that is or what voice that is and what tone, or do you remember anybody in your past who maybe had that way of speaking. The next thing then is when we've become aware of it and maybe we've looked at who it is, it's time to start listening to it and hearing it and kindly and softly and gently examining what it is that it's saying. What is it telling us about ourselves? Because that voice can become our narrative. That can become the script that we live our lives by. My script was, I'm not able to walk. I hate walking. I'm not able to lose weight. I'm disgusting. So this is the narrative that I have going on in my head constantly. And when we start to examine that and listen to that, and kindly and just gently start to question it. So that's my narrative. It's telling me that I'm horrible, that I'm disgusting. Am I that horrible? Why am I horrible? What is it about me that's so horrible? And this can be incredibly painful, incredibly difficult to do, and it might be beneficial to do this with the help of a therapist if you can afford it, or with journaling. It can also help. I find that if you start to write down the things that you're saying about yourself and just connect with yourself and allow yourself to flow out just allow free flow writing to happen after that, you might be quite surprised at what comes out, because that's how this started for me. It was the clicking of doing my morning pages and starting to connect with myself and hearing that voice and going, hold on a second, there's a difference here between that voice and what I'm feeling about myself and what I'm feeling inside and who I am and who the essence of who I am. The thing about that narrative that we've written for ourselves, we never question it. We just accept it because it's so solidified into our inner psyche that it's just there. And we can question it. It can be okay to kindly and gently, and everything that I'm talking about here is to do this with a pinch of salt, with a gentle hand that you would treat somebody else. And just think, okay, like maybe what is that narrative? What is that telling me about myself? Do I believe that? Have I ever questioned that? Maybe there is something else here and that's not actually true. When we're younger, we are told things by our families. Say, for example, religion. I'm not disputing anybody's religion, but you're brought up in a certain way, most of us. And then when we kind of get to, our teenagers or our 20s, we start to kind of question religion, or might even younger, or we might question our beliefs, or we might question eating meat or not eating meat and decide to make a change for ourselves. But we rarely question what we are in ourselves, what we're telling ourselves. And I believe that is because we're not even aware of how negative or how consistent or what that voice is telling us. It's just the script that is there. It just is. And when we become aware of it, we start to understand whose voice it is, and we start to examine what they're saying, listen to it, hear it, and question it. We can start to change that narrative for ourselves. A really practical tip, is to start to catch it. When you become aware of it, there's a couple of schools of thought on the way to deal with negative self-talk. These are a couple of the ways that I did, like the tools that you can use. One of them is catching and observing it. Say, for example, going for that presentation, you were disgusting. Mo talks about letting it just observe it and just let it float past. Just don't question it, don't do anything, just observe it and move on. And when we observe it, we're changing a part of our brain. We're engaging with a different part of our brain. We're not trying to kind of make sense out of it or anything. We're just like, oh, okay, that's, there that thought goes. It's like when meditation happens, in mindfulness meditation, you hear a thought or you see something and you just allow it to go. It's the same kind of principle as that, just allowing it to float away. So that's kind of an observation, catching it, observing it, and just allowing it go. Another one to do, this helped me a lot, this is the one that I did consistently, is blocking. You are disgusting. I hear you, but I'm not dealing with it today. I would literally go, and it's something you can do both in your mind, you can make this motion in your mind, or you can literally go, nope, I am not listening to that today. I do not need that today. This would be good as well, say for weight loss. If you find that you see something and you kind of get that trigger, like, ooh, I'd like a bit of that. I'm like, nope, I'm not thinking about that today. That's not today. And I like the active response is pushing it away and going, no, I'm not dealing with that today. I'm not eating that today. I'm not interested today. I don't care what negative thing you're going to tell me about myself. No, push it away. And the more you do this, the easier it gets. The easier it is to catch it and push it, or catch it and observe it floating away. I know people put them into red balloons and like in their mind and let them float away. Whatever it is that works for you. I do find that blocking, that active motion of blocking, helps me to stay firm in myself and in my resolve and connect with who I am. And that brings me on to the next thing, is connecting with who we are. To ensure that we're not living in that narrative, not living in that ether, we need to make sure that we're grounded. And by grounding, we want to make sure that we can feel our feet and be present within our body. We might not have time to get outside and, put our feet into the soil and, all that kind of thing. But grounding, you don't have to be perfect about these things. Grounding can just be wiggling your toes, rocking your feet back and forth, feeling your body, feeling the meat of your body, looking at yourself, connecting with yourself, and that brings you present into your body, and it stops that narrative going on, or it makes, if that narrative comes in or that thing raises its voice, you're going, no, it makes life easier to be able to do that. And grounding is something, it is a practice. And I do find that when I'm not grounded, when I'm kind of living, a little bit headless chicken, that voice can raise its head and can kind of infiltrate a little bit more than it would if I wasn't grounded. I would always recommend giving grounding a bit of a go. Another way then to help to change the narrative is to start to reframe it. Start to change the negative way that we think about ourselves. Our brains also, I want to mention, do not know the difference between a positive and a negative. I'm really overworked and busy, and instead of reframing it to say, I don't want to be overworked and busy anymore, or something like that, your brain will only understand overwhelmed and busy. If you are saying then, I'm overwhelmed, you can reframe that to say, I'm in demand. If you think, I can never lose weight, reframe it. I haven't found the best way to lose weight yet. And when we're reframing things, we start to become more positive. So we're coming from a positive standpoint as opposed to that immediate negative. And by doing that, then our brain starts to look for more positive. Positive attracts positive within ourselves. And when we start to reframe those things, we can then see more positive around us. It does take time, and I am not perfect. These things are not perfect, but trying to focus more on the positive, or reframing our thinking to be something that's positive and not to change our auto settings, our default settings from negative to something that is not necessarily even positive. Even neutral will do. Neutral is a great stance. We're looking at the okay place here. We don't need to be good. We just want to get out of that bad place. And then my final bit then is to replace your negative thought with a positive one. Every time you hear yourself say something about yourself that's negative, or your situation that's negative, replace that then with a positive thought. I hate my thighs. I really like my hair. I am not capable of going for that job interview. I'm really good at what I do. You're changing that to a positive. So you're trying to train your brain to go towards that positive. And by doing so, by blocking, by doing all of these different things, we're trying to come from a more positive space, or even just a damn neutral space, because we do not need to be as hard on ourselves, because the world is hard on us enough as it is, and we can be our own worst enemies. But reframing things and replacing the negative with a positive will ultimately help us to become more positive, help us to come from a more positive place, and to help to quieten that inner critic, that negative self-talk. As I said before, this is not a constant state. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a dance camp. I ended up getting up and doing a solo, and I was stressed, and I just did it. And then the negative narrator hopped in and started telling me that, like, why are you standing here? Why are you doing the solo? There are much better dancers here that deserve this. Why are you doing this? I had to catch that. I had to catch that voice and reframe that. What would the me before think about what I have just done? Standing in front of a crowd, how proud would she have been? How proud am I that I had the gusto and the balls to get up and do that? Good for you. And you might not believe it. It might seem really strange at the start. It might seem really awkward, but it will become your default. We're trying to change our default from the negative to the positive, or the negative just to the not so bleeding hard on ourselves. Guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed this. I know it was very chatty, but if you have, please leave me a couple of brains and a couple of hearts in the color of your choosing down in the comments. Let me know something, one thing that you say to yourself about yourself, and I'd like you to reframe that thinking for me down in the comments. So literally, or replace it. What is one thing that you constantly hear yourself telling yourself, and then reframe it or replace it down in the comments down below, because I'd like us to get this, actively doing this for ourselves, actively changing these things. And these things might be something that, you know, Jennifer might not realize that she's saying about herself until you write it down. She goes, oh my God, I do tell myself that all the time. I need to reframe that. And I hope that that is helpful to you. So leave me the brains, because we're all talking about the mental health here, and the hearts, and then do the little reframing exercise. Hope you guys like these little exercises. Maybe I can do some more of these that might be beneficial to you. Let me know. And if there's anything else you would like me to film, please do let me know. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps to grow this channel, and just to spread a little bit of normal positivity and normalness, and trying to reframe our brains with other people. And you can share it with people that, you know, might find it beneficial and like it as well. But guys, I'll love you and leave you. Thank you so much, and I'll chat to you next week. Bye guys. Oh, and show for yourself.